Blitz is like a special player in my mind. I don't think that there's like a better player in Asia right now.
Dude, if they get fucking China, GG, man, GG.
Yeah, Valve have put out these rankings and they don't give a fuck, man. All right, welcome. This is episode 44 of Geographically Challenged. We're back once again. Blair has been having a good holiday over in Cologne. Not sure what else he got up to over there. Pilski's been doing things as well. But yeah, look, we've got a lot to talk about. We've got a lot of Asian CS to catch up on, and there has been some pretty interesting developments over in Mongolia in particular, I think. That's our first topic of the week. And so we talk about the Mongolz at Cologne, and I thought they did pretty well. I think we sort of, when we were talking about this roster, we had some degrees of trepidation. You know, we weren't too sure necessarily what we were going to get from 910 and Mzinho, particularly, obviously being fairly fresh faces to the international circuit. But I think actually in the case of both of those individuals, they look pretty good. Blair, maybe obviously you were the one that was sort of hands on the ground there. How did you sort of feel about the changes, and how did you feel about the roster going over in Cologne? It looked pretty good.
It looked pretty good. It looked very good, right? And I think I was one of the loudest voices as well when it came to, all right, if I look at these two new players being picked up, I haven't seen them play. I haven't even seen them play much in even, a top 3 Mongolian team, right? So obviously I had my trepidations as well, but clearly Maaraa / maybe Blitz as well, they know what they're doing picking up these players. I was genuinely blown away by 910, like 910, whatever you call his name. I think it was easily, just based on the first couple of games against some pretty good opposition, right? I'm looking at teams they played. They had that game against Maus where Torishi dropped 50 kills into OTs to which they lost, which should have been theirs. They beat Furia, almost heartbreakingly came close to beating Heroic, and the same thing against Game of Legion as well, right? So I think they've passed with flying colors, if you ask me. And for me, 910, the fact that he just off the gate from the first couple of maps looked better than Annihilation ever did with the AWP, because Annihilation was always streaky, right? He was really good in some clutch moments. He had a lot of highlight moments. And for 910, he had his highlight moments as well, but more about the consistency when it comes to just dropping about 20 plus kills seemingly every single map, whether with the op or with the rifle, adds that extra layer of stability that I really wanted this Mongolz roster to have. So he was great. And Mzinho as well, right? 16-year-old kid. We saw how it went down against Cadian. You know what I like about this kid? He's the only guy in the old IHC roster, the various versions of IHCs and Mongolz I've seen so far. He's the only one who yells on LAN. He's the only one who stands up and just like yells back, and is young. His voice is just kind of broken out, so it's super cute, super fun to watch. And he had a lot of clutch moments as well. I think he had a little bit more of a slower start as opposed to 910, but the last couple of games they played against Heroic, Game of Legion, he had a lot of standout moments as well. So yeah, all in all, they look better. This looks like the best iteration of IHC / Mongolz we've seen in a year and a half, which is wild to say, considering these two players debuted in IEM fucking Cologne, the final CSGO, Cologne event, which is kind of crazy, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, I have a few thoughts on it. Obviously, like, how much can you really draw? How many conclusions can you really draw from one tournament? That's probably the first thing in my head. Obviously, it's a good start. No complaints at all from me. But I do want to see, where they're going to go with it. I do tend to agree with you as well, though, Blair, that like this does look really good. I mean, I'd say since the departure of Score, this is probably the best look that the Mongolz have had. But again, with the fact in mind that we've only seen one tournament from them, there is obviously still that question mark. 910 looked great. I think obviously bringing an AWPer like him into the mix is really, really key for the success of really any team, obviously, playing on the international level. But certainly it seems like he has quite a high ceiling. He's got a lot of raw potential, I would say. It's just going to be whether or not, he's going to be able to consistently hit those kinds of numbers. I did see he had a bit of a fall off when it went from play-ins to the actual tournament itself. Obviously, he was playing against better teams, so you'd probably expect that. But if you look at some of the other players, Blitz in particular actually went from performing worse in the play-in to actually better at the actual tournament. So, I think obviously when we're talking about AWPers, you're probably going to be having a bit of a highlight sort of put upon you. There's going to be a little bit of pressure. I don't know necessarily whether or not that'll be the same case for Mzinho, right? When you've got such a strong rifling core with Blitz and Techno, but certainly in the case of 910, Mongolz and people watching Mongolz have always sort of highlighted the AWPers, and he's got big shoes to fill in a sense. I think that everyone always focuses on the AWPers, so I'm quite excited to see what he can do, and whether or not he can keep that level up, because he did look really clutch, he did look really exciting, but maybe it's a one-hit wonder. We'll have to wait and see how he goes again. But yeah, I think as far as a starting point, it looks really good. And the point that I kind of wanted to touch on a little bit more here was actually Maara's influence in this team. Like I think we don't really talk about Maaraa that much when we're talking about the Mongolz. Like we're always talking about the players and the changes and this and that, but Maaraa has been that constant alongside, like Blitz and Techno at this point are kind of constants in that roster as well. But I think for me, I do kind of have to give some props to Maaraa, because I feel like he's a little bit undervalued maybe, or not spoken about all that much. But whatever he is doing, whatever the support structure around this team is, they're doing something right. And obviously you'd have to put a lot of that on the coach. And sometimes they make changes where we look at it from the outside and go, well, that doesn't really seem to make a whole lot of sense. But Pilski, I gotta say, like it seems to me like almost every time they make a change, it goes well. Or it looks better than the last change that they made, with the exception obviously being that score one, but there was some external pressures there. But he seems to sort of have a bit of a knack for it. So I kind of just want to give him some props. He seems to be, I would say, probably the GOAT coach of Asian CS right now. Like, if you had a Maaraa in Rare Atom, for example, or in Tyloo, like what could they do with the Chinese scene? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's. I mean, they do. It's called Advent, and they just play 4v5. But you guys got to get your Advent kick in. You always just got to kick in once before the show even starts. It's fucked up. No, honestly, Mongolz. What I will say is, even before kind of Score didn't was gone for the team, the thing that's always really impressed me about Mongolz is their overall structure and the way that they play CS. And when they, the great thing that we all gave them props for when they did have a few breakout performances with their old roster is that they didn't win in a gimmicky way. Like historically, I feel like, we've had our Asian CS teams, like the Chinese teams and things like that, who historically couldn't play structured. They had to go and frag really hard. They had to out aim the other team. They made questionable decisions. I feel like the one of the core things of the Mongolz team is just that they can play fundamentally sound CS. They play as a team and they play together. And I think that's where these roster changes have kind of been founded in. They've taken a very young player into the system where clearly they want to play for the system. I did not think it was going to work, and it rarely does work when you have a debut tournament like Cologne, which is why everyone's so impressed by it. Usually, especially coming from a minor region, you make changes like this, they don't work out, you get fisted, and that's kind of what everyone expects. So this is a big outlier, and I need to see more tournaments as well and see how they go. And I at the same time as well, just the fact that these roster changes worked does not devalue the fact that Score should still be on the roster, in my opinion. He should still be there. So if they were able to put him in, that'd be sick, but I think
that's one where you have to
Tyloo prison.
No, you just have to let sleeping dogs die. There's just no world he's coming back. If it was going to happen, it would happen. There's no point even talking about it anymore.
I will say this though, right now that they've proven how these lineup changes can really work out. Hasteka still is a big question mark.
He's IGLing now, by the way.
Is he though?
No. I think they switched back to Blitz.
They switched back.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now I'm wondering. He's also kind of playing this aggro lurk, kind of sometimes quasi entry sort of role in his team. And honestly, I just feel like they're better players in Mongolia. You can easily pick up who can fill that role much more. Much better. And yeah, he had a really good game. I think it was against Heroic where he was the one who really popped off, right, in that very close series they had. But just one pop-up's not good enough for me. If they're able to pick up someone else, I just feel that they do a much better job and the team would be overall better. But what I do like from what I'm seeing is the core, right? Techno 4K has come into his own. He looks like he's playing like he's been there for years right now. We saw when he came into this team how nervous he was. He had a very rough opening tournament. I think it's one of the RMRs, if my memory serves me right. He's looking like super solid. Dude, he's out-aiming some of the best players in the world on LAN, right? And while working in that system, Blitz is still the best player for me. Best IGL in Asia. I mean, at least based on what I've seen so far. And everyone's gelling into the system, is working very well with Maaraa. And just to add on to what Pilski said as well, what I really like is I want people to go back to a couple of Inferno games and even on Mirage as well, where on the T side especially, what I really liked was how it wasn't just these calls based out of spawn, right? They had some execute, just straight up full commitment. That's what I also liked a lot. No matter what they're facing, who they're facing against, their commitment to the protocols was so good. They had some of the best trading in the entire tournament, even though they got knocked a little early, and that's fantastic. Every fight you take as a CT against them, you have two guys swinging you, along with flash assists and whatnot, which is very good protocols. And one thing which impressed me even further would be when they're in man disadvantage 3v5, the sort of plays they go for. That's a scenario where you have to go for a play, you need to go for an info play, but they manufacture it. They just don't go for a solo peek like a lot of Asian teams do, and they don't even go about it like how a lot of other EU teams do, where one pop flash peek, maybe get a couple of kills, get some info back for your team. They don't just do that. They do these, shall we say, more Asian CS-esque sort of plays, which do work out. So they're mixing a lot of elements. Speaking to people like Cadian, for example, it was like, yeah, they play good EU-centric CS, but there's also a flair of just wildness of the Asian CS coupled with their aim, which makes them so unpredictable. So it's not full Tyloo, it's not full Rare Atom, it's not full EU CS. It's a mixture of everything, which it seems to work for them.
Yeah, Blitz is like a special player in my mind. I don't think that there's like a better player in Asia right now. He's actually fucking insane.
Absolutely.
Like he's playing like a star European player. And there was even rounds I remember in that heroic series on Inferno where like he was making individual reads. Like this one round, he just ran up Banana at double entry B because he like recognized what the utility timing was. And I was like, like to have the confidence to do that against one of the best teams in the world because you see the timing to do it and then execute it in the server is like, that's when you know that he's a special player. And also I just wanted to say RIP because I was awake. Sometimes I do skip the EU games where I watch the VOD after, but I was actually awake watching Mongolz because I was working a different like EU broadcast in a different game. And RIP, that heroic choke was fucking woeful. Long
that techno round,
that was their
man.
series.
Yeah,
that was a 2-0. That was a 2-0. Was it?
That was a 2-0.
It would have been a 2-0, and I think they would have gone on to play Gamer Legion or something.
Gamer Legion as well, which came down to. Also, I feel like a lot of teams have not just figured out Inferno, but their Inferno doesn't look as solid as it was once. Could also be that Gamer Legion were playing an incredible Inferno. They're beating almost everyone on that map, right? But yeah, that was a choke. I didn't see Techno 4K with a single spray or a burst or a tap that entire tournament until that one winning moment, and he just
that problem was a moment where you have time to think. Like it's not instinct at that point anymore. He's like literally behind them. He's like, okay, I gotta not fuck this up, and that's the point where you're like, you've overthought it.
I look at it this way, right? Like, think about it this way. Look, I know it's Techno, and we know he's still very young, right? So what is it, 18, 19 or something?
I think he's like 20.
Very young. Yeah, I mean, still very young. Everyone's very young in the team.
He's 18.
Is he 18?
18, there we go. He's still super fucking young, right? No. And these are moments as a player, as a team, that you have two paths ahead of you. One is, you kind of choke off that and you be like, oh, we almost had it, and you could just go to shit, or you get better. And one thing I've seen from Blitz and his motley crew, they just keep getting better. So I'm not too worried about it.
No, I agree. Like, I think obviously when you look at this roster, they have such a nice core. Like it looks really nice. You've got Techno Blitz. You've just got two potential star riflers that can pop off at any given moment if they need to. 9-10, obviously we've only seen one tournament from him at an international stage, but if he continues to play that way, then that's three really strong, impressive individuals that look like they could win you a game if they're having their day. Mzinho and Hastika maybe don't have that kind of role, or don't necessarily need to do that at the moment. But even Hastika, we've seen some pretty impressive stuff from him. Particularly, I felt like domestically, like Hastika feels like domestically, that's where he kind of gets away with a little bit more. He can make those crazy lurks, and I remember watching like at the RMR like some really stupid lurks around like Ancient in Temple and stuff like that, where he would just get behind like entire teams, and you'd be like, he does it like 2 or 3 rounds in a row, and you'd be thinking, what the hell's going on here? I mean, the only other thing, of course, to me is like, where does it end? Like, where does the talent pool end within Mongolia at this point? Because it just seems like
seeming doesn't end, dude.
It's like the new China, right? Instead of there being someone to pull out of China, it's just like now we're finding kids in Mongolia, and their population is like 3 million people, by the way.
That's like my neighborhood. That's like my fucking neighborhood, not my city. Like half my neighborhood. That's 3 million people right there. Yeah. I couldn't find one good Counter-Strike player right now. Like nowhere close. It's insane.
Where are they finding these guys? You know what I mean? Like, are they
that's where you say, like, I don't think it's a talent farm as much as the system, whatever system they have in Mongolz and the leadership and the way that they are approaching, like, being a CS team is special. I actually don't think it's the talent necessarily. And I think that the decisions they're making are like, do you fit in this system or don't you fit in this system? And if you don't, then fuck off, because we don't need you.
This actually reminds me of Sweden in a bit, right? Like back in early 2000s and whatnot, where everyone's surprised why this small Scandinavian country, they're just shitting out so many good players back then. Of course, it was primarily the internet for the side of for that particular time. And also the fact that, it was fucking cold all the time. Everyone's playing those LAN cafes. The similarity here is Mongolia. I don't know about the internet connectivity, but it is a small country. It's a small city. Most of them coming out from Ulaanbaatar. And they do have that cafe culture, right? So if you're going to be playing Counter-Strike, you're going to be playing against people that we know, like people like Dobu or maybe Urcast or Blitz and all these guys. So like you said, it's just the fact that I remember this quote I think Maaraa gave to Maaraa. I think it was Maaraa who gave to Red Eye when Red Eye's like, well, why are you Mongolians so good at CS? It's like, we have, fucking nothing else to do in Mongolia.
Yeah.
Which seemingly is true. So yeah, you might get someone who's kind of average overall skill-wise, and you put them in the grinder against like the sort of players we're seeing on Mongolz or on Atox day in, day out over a course of 6 months or 1 year. You will get better. You will get better real fucking quick, right? And it's good to see. I was watching a couple of games of Atox as well. The one with Dobu and Yami, and
I'm excited about that team too.
They're very solid as well, right? And I feel like it just trickles down. The experience trickles down. You're going to be playing against your local opposition, and someone like Dobu is pretty reasonably smart as well. He's going to be like, all right, if I'm going to beat Mongolz, I need to start playing their style and adapt it. And people get better. People start learning. So whatever's working in Mongolia, it's clearly working out for them.
Everyone I talk to is super keen on Yami from that Atox roster. So
yeah.
We might see some interesting stuff like when an Asia-centric event pops up again, or like an ESL Challenger. That'll be starting, I think, in a few weeks. And whatever happens with CS2 and stuff like that.
Jordan, think about this, right? CS2.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, man. I'm thinking CS2, young 20-year-old players. Fucking hell.
But think about the teams. Now, imagine we get Mongolz. Imagine we get Atox, right? Imagine we get a couple of the Chinese guys. Let's get Rare Adam. Let's get... if Tyloo qualifies, sure, but I'm looking at someone like Lin Vision or one of these other guys, right? Get a couple of teams from Australia, get Grayhound in, get maybe Vertex in, whoever qualifies, and then maybe 1 or 2 spots for the rest of Asia. Basically an Asian minor, right? But more about, not about like region-based. I don't want to see like a Middle East mixed team with like Loba and a couple of guys coming in. I don't want to see that. I want to see proper Asian teams coming in, playing like an EPL format for a couple of weeks, right? Being streamed properly from a studio like we had back then for Pilly, if you remember, for EPL. Have something like that. And looking at the level of CS we're seeing from a couple of teams out right now, that'd be good viewership, man. People will tune in. People are like, I want to see more Mongolz. You know what? I can't fucking see more Mongolz right now. No. Unless it's like a local Mongolian tournament, which I have to look up fucking Wikipedia.
And you have to watch in Mongolian. There's no English broadcast either. And the same thing, by the way, like these kinds of things exist, not on LAN, but like obviously there's Perfect World, the Perfect World leagues and stuff like that. And then there's ESL Challenger. Right. But like, okay, ESL Challenger.
You can't find this shit.
Isn't, I don't know if they broadcast every single day of ESL Challenger, but I don't feel like it gets pushed as much as it could. I actually think part of the issue with that is that like people look at ESL Challenger and think, oh, that's a tier 2 product. Like people just don't watch because it's like not a if it was called ESL Pro League Asia, I actually think that makes a difference. Remember how many people used to watch ESL Pro League Asia? And it's not as if ESL
Branding
Challenger is not on CSGO, like not on the main channel, which is now ESL CS, not CSGO. But you know what I mean? But like, A, either they're not broadcast in English, or B, they're not marketed as well as they could be. Anyway, yeah, look, I'm on board with it, but I just don't think there's anyone that's going to do it.
There's definitely some value being missed there, for sure.
Yeah.
Anyway. But there will always be a Middle East team, especially nowadays. 100%. There'll be, if they made that, they would put a Middle East team in there, and we all know why. But let's not dwell on that.
Listen, that's what Skyesports Masters could be, by the way. But obviously, that's very India-centric. That could actually be, we're going to invite top teams from all over Asia, have obviously some Indian teams, maybe make it two teams from India.
2 Indian teams, fair enough.
2 Indian teams because you're a host country, whatever, that's fair. Or even better, run an India qualifier, have your 8 India teams, maybe scale it back a little bit, less money into just that. Put the money into a fucking Asia tournament. Invite Rare Adam, invite Tyloo. I don't know if Tyloo deserves an invite at this point, but anyway, we'll just give him based on the name brand.
Have a Chinese qualifier. There we go.
Sure, whatever. Have a Chinese qualifier with 2 slots. Have an OS qualifier with 1 or 2 slots. Have a Mongolia qualifier with 1 or 2 slots. Like, mate, fuck. That would get me hard, but anyway.
I mean, if you look at the price pool, all these teams would happily come down and play for it. Honestly.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yep. All right.
Anyway,
I don't know if we've got much more to say about the Mongolz, but look, I hope things continue the way they have. It looks good.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
It's kind of sad they're not playing EPL. I don't think they qualified, right? I don't know. Like,
I think it was Rare Adam that's going to the next ESL Pro League. Which, by the way, since we're on the topic of Rare Adam, we might as well just shift that up the order of the topics. We were going to talk about this last, but since we're talking about Rare Adam here, I think prevalent to mention that they are now no longer Rare Adam. So we'll see what happens with that. Obviously, the news came out only a couple of days ago. I'm just going to open it up here and read it. But basically, the implication was, okay, so here it is. Rare Adam says, about our CSGO team roster change. Please read our announcement. Picture details below. Unfortunately, we couldn't reach an agreement on contract renewal with our CSGO team players, Advent, Mercury, blah, 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 blah. Basically, the whole team. After friendly communication, they have officially left the team as free agents. So the implication to me there is not that they were removed or anything like that. It's just that they were up for contract renegotiation. They couldn't find an agreement with Rare Atom, and now, as far as we know, as of today, which is the 8th of August, they are free agents, I would be very surprised if they don't find a team, like an organization. You're looking at a team that has an ESL Pro League spot, by the way, is pretty much one of the best teams in Asia. Like, they're almost guaranteed to make any Asia tournament that they actually want. Realistically, they probably could compete at those, but sometimes they don't. But they're still probably the best prospect you could get if you're a Chinese organization right now. Like, mate, if you're Tyloo, you're looking at that and going, fuck, can we poach a couple of those players, or can we poach the whole team? Or, they probably won't because of just how things work with Tyloo.
The Chinese super team that I said last time.
I mean, is it not possible, right?
Where's the Chinese billionaires at?
If you're Wings Up, or if you're Lin Vision, or any one of these other teams, are you not looking at that and saying, hey, maybe we can take Jam Young or Mercury or whoever it is? Or does another org try to come in and say, we're gonna pick up the whole team, but we're gonna spice things up a little bit, like finally Advent's gonna move on, we're gonna try something different?
Hell yeah.
Like, someone's got to be doing something in the background here with this team. I have to imagine.
I'm going to be so surprised if they don't get picked up before EPL. I mean, their group starts, honestly.
Yeah. Yep.
Has to be.
All right. Well, since we were, again, on the topic of Cologne, we'll just touch briefly on Grayhound. I don't think that there's too much to really say here. Didn't make it out of play-ins. They went down 11-16 to Furia. 1-2 versus Imperial. Wasn't super close of a result. Broken record, Pilski. Should we just move on?
I mean, yeah, it has to be said, though, that, I feel like it feels like a side effect of, complacency of being able to qualify for everything, almost. And it feels like the standard of excellence for an Australian team is just to attend the event. And it's felt like that for a while. And I think Grayhound, as much as I love the players, and I think the team obviously has the potential to do well, I feel like they haven't had that same kind of special sauce. I feel like they've been up and down since no Dexter, and it's always been, I feel like it's been weird since then. Sometimes they do good, but most of the time it's a bit underwhelming. I was really hoping that Dexter wouldn't go to a European team, not gonna lie, but he's done pretty well for himself on Fnatic already. Yep. I think already surprising over there. So look, fair enough. He's doing pretty well for himself. Grayhound, real big struggle for them though.
Yeah.
I think it was Tech Girl, or was it Yanko? They made a pretty good analogy where Greyhound are like that old guy at the bar, right? He's just always there at the bar, drinking, half drunk, and the bartender's like, "Oh, it's Mike again. Here's a pint." And he grabs a pint. It's like, shows up, has a drink, goes home. Happens every time.
Refuses to elaborate.
Just refuses to elaborate. And then they have these moments where it's super close, and then I think it was, when did I see them last? I think it was Rio. the RMRs, the majors, right? I think in challenges or whatever, where they played, and they were so fucking close. And we're like, yeah, you know what? They maybe need a coach. Maybe they need some little bit better calling, a mental strength or whatever. So I have a little bit of higher hopes coming here into Cologne. And again, the same old story all over again. So at this point, I don't want to pick or point fingers at any particular players. I think they're just doing their best, but it's not clicking. And it's unfortunate because I look at some of these players and man, they're solid players. I think they could do good. You look at someone like Justin, like JKS and Dexter, and how well they've done outside of Australia, right? I just look at some of these guys and I'm like, man, I wish Inns was in an EU team. You know what I mean? I wish he went there and had a success or something close to the success that JKS had, for example. And I don't know if that's going to happen. And hopefully with CS2 coming out, maybe there might be a few changes. But Grayhound for me has just plateaued, and they've plateaued for so fucking long that it looks like a flat line, right?
It does. I mean, yeah, like I said, this is a broken record. Like, this is a conversation we've had before. We've gone over they could move to Europe. They could have a coach. They could do this change or that change, whatever. I mean, I don't think it's worth really discussing at any length anymore until, either something changes or there's a, more interesting result to sort of put on the table and talk about. Like, obviously, IEM Sydney is coming relatively soon, so I mean that is one thing I'll say that may be beneficial for them. Like if we're wanting to sort of go down that train of thought that like they won't have to travel, they'll be in home ground territory, this and that.
For DreamHack, they're playing like not even the best teams in the world, and then we're talking about an S tier event when they just went to Cologne and played like Furia and Imperial. They're playing teams. It's not like they're playing Heroic or some shit. It's not like they're playing like G2 or something in their group. They're playing like Furia, who they're decent, but obviously they just made a change. It's not like they're unbeatable. And then and by the way, I was watching as well that Grayhound Furia game, and I just tuned in. I was working on another broadcast, and I was looking on my second monitor, and it was like 10-10 or 11-11 or something. And then I saw they got eco'd. They lost to Pistols in that best of one on Ancient. And as soon as I saw them lose to Pistols, I thought they were in a good position to win. And then I saw them lose to Pistols, and I was like, yeah, they lost. I turned it off. I turned the stream off, and then it was 11-16.
You just knew.
Yeah. All right.
Classic.
Yeah. So moving on then from that, let's talk about something, maybe that's not the biggest, most groundbreaking news, I guess, but at least for people in ANZ, this is kind of cool. There's a new team being put together. The old Eliminators roster is dead, so a couple of the members from that team, Apocdud and who was there with him? Savage. Sorry, yeah. I've written in my notes here. I've got Liki, Sterling, Hatz, Sterling, Apocdud. So I was like a little bit mindfucked for a second there, but it was Apocdud and Savage that moved on from Eliminators, and then obviously you've kind of got that core of the old LFO roster, which was Liki and Sterling, and then even Hatz was kind of floating around in that LFO roster for a while. But interesting team to sort of see being put together. I think this is very easily like that fourth place kind of gatekeeper team in ANZ. It kind of fills the shoes of Eliminators. I would say on paper, I think it looks a little bit stronger than Eliminators. You've definitely got a little bit more experience across the board there. The only thing that I'll question, I suppose, is how do players like Liki and Sterling and Hatz kind of coming back into a competitive environment, because they've had a little while off. Like I think they haven't really been playing in comp games for the better part of maybe 6 months or so. Sterling especially, it seems like he's been off the radar for a little while. Like Liki and Hatz, I think, were playing at the IESF thing and stuff like that. So that, obviously they're all floating around. I mean, am I, jumping up the wrong tree here? Does it really make much of a difference? Probably not.
It'll be a good team, and going into CS2, if they make their focus good enough, then it has some potential. But I think there's a chance they could do really well for themselves, going into CS2 and maybe win some series off of people and things like that, some of the other odds teams. But I feel like Grayhound, Vertex, Rooster is a top three that's probably not going to change unless these guys all click and do really well. And then also CS2 might shake things up a little bit in a lot of ways, because there's going to be a lot of kind of changes going into that game. And I don't think that it's going to be as straightforward as the same teams are going to be the best.
Yeah, I mean, I think the grinders are probably, at least early on in CS2 are going to be there. So I could see Rooster stock going up quite a lot, because those guys just seem to play like 24/7.
I could see Rooster start winning. Yeah, honestly. But who knows?
Big question, I guess, as to how things are going to play out with CS2. We still don't know yet when that's going to come out. I mean, obviously, everyone's been saying like Cologne's the last CS:GO event. Hey, maybe Bleh heard something over in Cologne, but we won't leak the details unless you want to. No,
all I know
he doesn't want to.
All I know is.
Oh, here we go, Spice.
I don't know, but I was theory crafting with a couple of my colleagues over a couple of pints, and I was like, listen, they've released 7 maps already.
Yep.
Right. Dust 2, Mirage. You got a Vertigo. I hope that doesn't get added. We got Ancient Anubis coming out. It's 5 maps right there. You got Overpass. You got Nuke. You got 7 maps right there, and we know Inferno's coming out. Right, it's almost ready to go. Like maybe in a couple of weeks, and they'll be taking like a couple of weeks to like release 1 map or 2 maps or whatever. I wouldn't be too surprised if they just push it out at the end of this month before EPL starts. I think it would be the perfect time.
It would be spicy.
It would be great. It'd give a lot of teams the opportunity to kind of get used to the game and whatnot. And then Sydney would be the first big CS2 event as well, which is fucking sick at the same time, right? So I'm just doing the math in my head, and I feel like end of August would make the most sense. But what the fuck do I know? It's Valve.
Yeah.
Maybe we could just release it a month before the RMRs or something.
Well, see, that's the thing that I'm thinking is like, it's Valve, so we know that that they're aware of these tournaments and stuff like that. They're obviously at the major, and they're talking to ESL, and they're talking to whoever. But like in the past, they've dropped patches in the middle of Pro League. So it's just are they?
It's been a while. It's been a while since they've done anything that crazy, though, right?
Sure,
so.
But I mean, and I would like to think it would be different when you're literally dropping a whole quote unquote new game. Versus a patch or something like that.
But think about if you're Valve and you're like, listen, what's the best way where you can have like a proper full-fledged pro test environment, right? And you drop it, maybe a couple of weeks prior to EPL. And obviously it's going to be a little rough for the TOs, but they have to scramble and try to make it work. And obviously, I'm not sure how, the Go TVs and all are going to work in the new game, how all the camp hats and everything the observers use and whatnot are going to work in the new game. But at least it's going to be basically trial by fire. But for Valve, they're going to be like, holy shit, we have a great test environment. It's a 5-week-long event. We're going to have all the best teams in the world playing before, before Sydney or before the RMRs. So it would make 100% sense for Valve to kind of, even if it's not fully cooked, just push it out. Even if
do you think they would switch though, like for EPL, or do you think they would play the last version of Go?
From what I've heard, and I'm not quoting anyone here, it's rumors, but from what I know, it's like when Valve pushes it out, it is Go. Like you have no option to like revert to CSGO or whatever. So you just have to go stick with CS2. And if they push in the middle of EPL, that's kind of fucked. Imagine if they play the first 2 groups are in CSGO, the next 2 groups in CS2. That's
I mean, that would be absolute havoc, really, would it not? It would break so many things.
You would have to start again almost.
You couldn't.
Have to start again.
How could you start again?
You wouldn't do it though because of logistics, but that would be
all the guys that have already got been knocked out. It's like, just hang on, come back to Malta for another couple of weeks.
Or it's like this season of EPL will not be a part of the Intel Grand Slam. Thank you very much.
I could see that being a thing. I could for sure. Yeah, I think like at that, whatever. Obviously,
but I don't think Valve would do that. I think they've been very hands-on in a good way overall.
Sure.
Obviously, some people can be critical about it, but they haven't gone the full route of certain other, publishers, so to speak. And I think in the past, since just pre-COVID for the past 4 years, they have been very aware of how the esports ecosystem works and how the TOs work and how the calendar works, right? So we really haven't seen these issues where they just drop a patch in the middle of a fucking tournament, which we've all been there. We've all been there, but I don't think they're going to do it this time.
Yeah, it definitely seems to have gotten a lot better in that regard. Anyway, since we're on the topic of Valve, I'm sure you guys saw, but there was a big Valve announcement, pretty big talking point in the CS circles over the last week or so. Just for anyone that's unaware, the announcement was that tournament organizers will no longer have unique business relationships or other conflicts of interest with teams that participate in their events, and invitations to all tournaments will use our, and in this case that means Valve, ranking system, or otherwise be determined by open qualifiers. So what's our initial thoughts on this? I'm sure you guys have some hot takes. Pilski, I think you in particular have always been someone that was quite anti-franchise leagues, were you not?
I don't think I've even talked about it, to be honest, ever. Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
No, maybe, I don't know. You always talk about formats or something like that, qualifiers.
Oh, yeah, fucking nerd, basically. I think I don't really know. I think that obviously like esports over the time that CSGO's been out has kind of turned into this thing, right?
Yeah.
Like this game's life cycle, I feel like has kind of changed how the industry operates. You've gone a lot more towards franchise things for business reasons for a lot of these like big companies and leagues and stuff, the best leagues in the world. So I don't know. I think it's kind of a return to what it was always meant to be before people, cared like way more about making money almost. So I think it's interesting.
I actually have a more, I wouldn't say like controversial, but like the CS:GO esports scene is probably one of the healthiest we have in esports, right? Like, despite all the, all the issues that we have, with the esports winter and everything, and it has somewhat sustained itself. I know it's kind of become almost like a duopoly. Is that even a real word? I don't know, but
definitely.
it is a word, right? Yeah, there we go. So we got Blast, we got the EFG, ESL Faceit Group have acquired esports engine over NA as well. So these are the two big companies doing it. And sure, they might be a little strapped for cash at times, like Blast, for example. They were looking for funding and whatnot, but they're still carrying on. They're still trudging along. Once in a while, we have PGL coming in. Hopefully, as things get better, we might have Starladder coming back. It's still, a multifaceted esports sphere, which isn't heavily dependent on the publisher to do their own league, like, vis-a-vis Riot or Blizzard, for example. And it's very heavily dependent on the partnerships that you have with your orgs, hate it or love it, right? And I think ESL, with the Louvre agreement, and I know some orgs got fucked over, NA got fucked over years ago because of all of that. And I'm sure, it's not like there was no blood spilt in the process of making it, but there are ways for you to play EPL, right? You can qualify, a lot of qualifiers there. You have the ECL and all the, the EPT points and everything. At the same time, you have partner teams, which enable the partner teams to sustain themselves and also for, this revenue share model to work for themselves. Blast, on the other hand, it's much more closed off, right? But even they have partner teams, and that's why they're sustaining as well. So as kind of necessary evil, as much as I like it to be all, merit-based and having qualifiers for everything and all of that stuff, it's still important for these TOs to have these sort of partnerships just to sustain themselves and be profitable, so that we, not we, but like a lot of audiences who watch Counter Strike, they're able to watch some top tier CS every couple of weeks, every month, nonstop, because of the sort of partnerships and agreements they have. But yes, I totally see what Valve's coming from, because I think one of the biggest criticisms we had during the major was like how teams like Apex, Game of Legion, these unpartnered teams were just like shitting on the partner teams, right? So there was a bit of a gap, maybe because the top tier teams weren't playing with the tier 2 teams as often, so the meta had kind of evolved a little bit. Maybe those teams got better, the tier 1 teams a little bit lesser. I'm not too sure. I think the jury's still kind of out on that. But I see where Valve's coming from. But the good thing is, based on the press releases coming out from ESL and from Blast, where they said, we're aware of this. It's going to be till 2025. We have a couple of years to figure this out. And I'm sure they're going to be talking to Valve as well to be like, hey, we get you. We're going to try and make this as open as possible, not having exclusive things and whatnot, but maybe we can work out a system, right? So I'm not calling doom and gloom yet. I think it is a good thing, like go to Snappy's tweet where he made a tweet just shitting on Blast, basically saying, hey, it'd be really cool for us to, have a chance to play in your tournament, because we can, because we're not partnered, even though, they just literally reached the grand finals of Cologne and won IEM Dallas and made multiple grand finals in the past 1 year, right? So I totally see where it's coming from the side of unpartnered teams. I also get it from the TO's perspectives. I also get it from a Valve's perspective as well. But I kind of feel with 2 years of time to work with, there can be a middle ground found. Maybe someone won't be too happy, maybe the TOs perhaps, but at least
I think it's a question of like business versus like the spirit of the competition almost, where it's like, what do you prioritize? And obviously,
I mean, if there's no business, Pilski, there won't be competition, right? You know what I mean?
It goes backwards in terms of like the production value, and there's so many more inefficiencies, because that's what you're kind of taught. If you have like a duopoly like that, or you have like a monopoly, one few businesses or few kind of entities can control a lot of things, and it leads to a lot more efficiency because you don't have as much random shit happening. But once you take a lot of that out and you take a lot of the control and market share away from just a few people, it's going to be a lot more random shit, a lot more inefficiencies, and there's a lot more competition, and that's going to make companies have to spend more money on all kinds of shit.
It's definitely a conversation to be had from the TO's perspective. I think when you have Valve now at this point starting to kind of dictate how they operate their businesses, you're sort of looking at that and saying, well, maybe it's not necessarily profitable, or it isn't as easy for me to make a profit, or I mean, in some cases they're probably not already even making a profit, just to break even. It may not be as easy for us to break even, let's say, if you're going to enforce this. So if you want to have your cake and eat it, like maybe Valve needs to put some kind of assistance in the direction of the TOs, right? Are they willing to share some of the money that's being made on CSGO, to the TOs? Obviously, they do have some input in the majors, but they're not dictating how ESL runs their business normally, as far as Pro League and stuff like that are concerned. Now, though, this does affect their business, and you're going to say, oh, well, yeah, okay, they're the publisher, they can do whatever they want with the game, but I mean, at a certain point,
it becomes
just not have a game,
hypocritical, though, right?
Not have an esport, rather.
So it doesn't become a little hypocritical, though, if Valve starts supporting ESL or Blast with revenue when there are other TOs out there?
I'm not saying specifically it has to be ESL or it has to be this. I'm just saying if you want to make these sort of sweeping statements, and if you want to change, if you want to specifically say, okay, we can no longer do this, and that will directly harm businesses, and that will directly harm how the esports ecosystem currently runs, is there not something that you then have to also give back? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there has to be a bit of a push and pull, or am I wrong? Like, is it just, okay, everyone has to adapt or die?
It's their IP.
Sure.
It's their IP, so they can say, fuck you, we don't care, but I don't,
But they're making, how much money are they making off fucking boxes cases? It's like $50 million a month or something like that. Like, something insane. I can't remember off the top of my head. But it's something stupid. It's like, could you not, have, like, remember esports cases? Like, what happened to the esports cases? Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't understand how the esports side cannot be monetized.
I think it can. I know, but here's the thing. I really think...
That's what Riot's doing.
I really believe... Look, I've been very critical of Valve in the past, right? But in the past 3 or 4 years, I think they've been in the right path overall. Like, announcing majors well ahead of time. Not really, just being like, hey, it's our game, and we'll decide what has to be done. No, just kind of laying out some light guidelines, some rules, being like, hey, let's make the major the final event of the year. I think everyone agrees on that. I think it's fucking sick, right? It's a cap off of the season, right? Yep. So that's good. When it comes to them coming in with the coaching bands and stuff, okay, maybe a couple of these not a little dicey, but they've been listening to the community. They seem to be talking to the TOs way more. They're coming out saying, hey, you know what? We saw what happened in the major last time. We saw how teams like Apex and Game Legion and everyone played. We also see, maybe they saw Snappy's tweet. Maybe they're like, these exclusive leagues is kind of hurting our esports scene, so let's not do that. But hey, guess what? We're going to give it 2 years. Matt, listen, if it was almost any other publisher, I tell you, they're just going to be like, yeah, guys, so no more exclusivity. You have about 48 hours. That's how other guys would do it.
100%. I think that they've gone about it the right way. Like, you can't question that. The fact that they give TOs 2 years is quite a long runway, if I can speak my words correctly.
And I understand that, right? They're like, hey, you have partnerships and agreements which are legally binding, and we totally get it. So we're going to try and make it accommodate you, but also you guys need to go along with what we're saying over here. So honestly, I'm okay with this. I think Valve are on the right path, and even if they might make a few changes, it'll happen over time. And this is reflected in even the CSGO updates. Look at CS2, man. Bugs are getting fixed like instant. Go back to CSGO when it came out like beginning of the year. You guys remember 2013, 14, 15? You had fucking a week of a broken game, and these guys are like fixing it instantly. And I think it's reflecting in how they're dealing with the community as well, with the esports scene as well. So yeah, for me, the cynical cunt that I am, I'm pretty optimistic for a change.
I think I would have to agree. Like, I'm at the point now where I'm like, I have a higher level of optimism for Counter-Strike as a title than I feel like I probably had in the last 5 years. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, it was never going anywhere. It never felt like it was going to die or anything like that. But it was just like, all right, well, this is Counter-Strike. This is as good as it gets, kind of thing. Now, obviously, with CS2 coming out, it's like, okay, this is a fresh start. Who knows where we go from here? Signs look good. And obviously, as you say, like with the changes and stuff like that, it's bigger. It's bigger now. Everything's bigger. It's more important now than what it was when CSGO was released. Like, with the great power comes great responsibility, right? So if you're making this change, if you're doing all of these things, you kind of got to be on it. You can't be leaving it for a week before you're patching bugs at this point anymore. Like, it does have to be a little bit faster. So Yeah, I have a high degree of optimism. The one other thing that I sort of wanted to talk about on this topic was like, obviously they mentioned, you know, the rankings and the qualifiers. I'm interested to sort of see how that's implemented. Like I could see a world where, you know, for any given tournament, maybe it's like, okay, the top 10 ranked teams get an invite and then everything else is an open qualifier, or, you know, something similar to that, or, you know, everything's an open qualifier or whatever it may be. But what I do wonder there is, are we then going to have things like an Asia qualifier, an Oceania qualifier, and an NA qualifier, an EU qualifier? Or are we just saying everyone's qualifying through the same open qualifier and we go back to the world where, for example, like Vox back in like 2014, 2015, they were flying over to Europe, playing in the open Europe qualifiers and having to play through that?
No, I don't think it's going to be the case, dude. That'd just be crazy. That'd be insane. That'd be actually insane.
That gets you the best teams in the world, though. Like,
yeah, but
you know, everyone playing in the same qualifier. Is that not what they want here? If they're saying we're going to invite people based on rankings, we want the best teams in the world.
I feel like when they say rankings, it's like they just want to kind of collate it because, you know, obviously Blast have their own rankings, ESL have their own rankings, and like there is a discrepancy in how things are working out, right? And then the majors are different. So I think they're just trying to bring those all together. But if you look at Blast rankings or ESL rankings or even HLTV rankings as well, they all have like region-based rankings, right? So Valve have always been very clear. Look, I personally am all about competition, right? I obviously want to see the best in the world play in the biggest tournaments of the year. But there's also the part of me where I'm like, representation does matter. You know, you need to have some teams from some of these far-flung regions who have an opportunity to at least get a shot, to at least have an opportunity to compete. And that's what the majors are, right? That's why we have these qualifiers. That's why we have more South American and North American teams coming in for the RMRs and for the major and having more spots than, let's say, Cologne, where it's literally 90% EU, right? 95% EU or whatever. So I think Valve are going to stick with that. They obviously want it to be more global. I don't want them to go very heavy, heavy-handed like Riot does with Asia and whatnot, but I would also love them to really push CS2 in Asia a little bit more. Maybe that's why the Shanghai Major next year is one of the... I was actually surprised as well. I thought, hey, CS2 coming out, your first events are going to be happening in Copenhagen. Maybe the second one would probably be in NA, maybe to revitalize NA, or maybe second one could be in EU. But they're like, no, we're going to do it in Shanghai, which is kind of wild for me. But at the same time, I get it. It's early in the game's life cycle. And if you're able to push it and make it kind to have an impact in China, in Asia, and that manages to
if they get China,
a lot of these right. Dude, if they get fucking China, GG, man, GG.
Yep. Exactly.
Well fucking played.
Yep.
I mean, everyone's trying to go for China at the moment. Didn't Riot just announce like a China event as well?
Yep. Yeah. And that may be part of it. It's like, okay, well, we actually kind of have to do something about this unless we want literally, like, there's so many competing titles, especially in China, within the TAC FPS space. Like, you've obviously got Valorant. You have Crossfire as well. Crossfire's massive in China still.
Big. It's still fucking
like,
big, yeah.
I don't understand why people are playing that fucking game when Counter-Strike exists, but they do, you know what I mean? And if Valve don't give a shit about that, then they don't give a shit about that, then that's fine. But like, there is 100% a market to get a lot more players into the game in China. And also, China is probably one of their biggest fucking they're fucking huge on skins. Like, those fucking Chinese skin sites are just insane numbers. And so that's where a lot of that is coming from. And so you're not even talking about like, sales of the game or whatever, or, obviously it's free now, but like, just the market transactions that they could get from China is just insane.
It's not just that as well. I think the interesting thing with China is, despite every publisher pushing their game to the region, a lot of Chinese players who still play Counter-Strike. A lot of them, new players, old players, and whatnot. So Valve are like, listen, there is a market there. We just need to kind of
help it along. They just need to help it along.
Just give it a little bit of a push, right? They're not trying to reintroduce it like how Riot had to do with Valorant, but basically the entirety of East Asia. You look at Korea, you look at Japan, and how it's all targeted. It's like, hey guys, you got to play this game. You're going to put it in your PC banks and everything. Valve don't have to do that. Here's like, we're going to host our World Championship in your backyard because we love you guys. And I can only see one reaction to that. China will have to respond. They will. I really have a good feeling about it. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
I do wonder about the rest of Asia, though. Like, obviously, Mongolia is still in a good spot. India's definitely, I would say, on the upward trend. There's some external work going on there, so that's good. But what else have you got really right now? Like, as far as Southeast Asia is concerned, sort of nothing really. No rumblings. But
Vietnam's still a country, but then Vietnam hasn't had a good team.
Sure, they're all still countries.
Vietnam has got plenty of Valorant representation as well.
Like, okay, if there's a major in China, that's good for China. But like, people in Vietnam and Indonesia and Korea and fucking everywhere else.
Yeah.
They're not going
They're
to
on
China.
Valorant.
Like, so I don't know what you do there. Like, I don't know that anything will happen there. This is always that same conversation we go back to where we say, like, you need to have an endemic TO to that region to actually prop things up. You have that now in India. You have that in Mongolia. We've got Skyesports Masters. We've got Misa and Meta. And China's doing China's stuff, but
I mean, it just has such a fucking massive population. So even if you just get some of the market, it's not even necessarily like
you don't need to
capture
dominate
the whole market.
No.
It actually can be shared.
Yeah, I would really like to see Valve approach Korea in a different way this time around, right? Like, I know, just give it a shot with the PC banks. It's still a very heavy PC bank culture over there in Korea, and if they're able to like tie up with, I don't know, like what's happening with Kespo, who the fuck ever is like running this shit over there right now, but just tie with them.
Valorant, but yeah, I don't know about Kesper and some of the other endemic Korean TOs.
Yeah, just like some of the bigger, not just a TO, obviously deal with the TOs as well, but also like the distributors or whatever, right? And trying to like, I just feel like, man, as for Korean players, I feel like a lot of the new ones, they don't even know what CS is. But I love this game. We all love this game for so very long, and we know if they have a chance to play, they'll be like, holy shit, this game is fucking amazing. This game is crisp. This game can reward skill, and we know how good some of these motherfuckers are. Look at Valorant, look at Overwatch, look at every other fucking game out there. I want to see the Koreans come into CS properly, like we had in Project KR, the old MVP Solo and his boys, right? So having that would be good. I think Korea would be one push I'd love to see. China, absolutely. And then the rest of Asia, because it's so fragmented, right? You just can't target Vietnam or like
it has
Thailand
to be SEA as a whole. Yeah.
It has to be SEA as a whole. And listen, that has been something I've been tackling for the past 10 years, ever since I got into like CSGO, like broadcasting. Like, how do I fucking get these guys to like, start playing this game more and to elevate the scene? And listen, I won't lie, I haven't found the solution to that, right? So maybe that's something where it's a case for Southeast Asia of them kind of realizing, hey, look at China, look at South Korea, look at these guys, look at how well they're doing in CS2 or whatever. We want to do that. We want to compete with that. So it could be like a following thing instead of targeting them directly. Let's target the easier markets.
If the opportunities are there, people will play. That's all it needs to be. There needs to be opportunities. At the moment, there are no opportunities. There's no opportunities in Counter-Strike that you can't get way easier and more lucrative versions of in Valorant, in SEA. Like, if you're a kid right now who wants to play attack FPS in Southeast Asia, you choose Valorant because you can actually go somewhere with that. You don't go anywhere with CS right now in those countries or those regions.
Makes sense.
So if there's a, Asia-wide league, Asia-wide qualifiers, something like that, where you could legitimately look at it and say, okay, this is a new game. Maybe we have a chance of doing something. Maybe teams play. So I think that's the first step. But anyway, one thing that I wanted to touch on as well is obviously with this announcement, like what happens to Skyesports Masters, right? This must be a kick in the dick, man. Like, you've just launched your franchise league. It's been going for like a month or two. And then Valve's like, no more franchise leagues in 2 years. So
I did see a tweet from them.
Did you? I didn't see it, I don't think.
From Shiva, I think it's the guy who runs the entire thing. And they did say that they're aware of this and we have like a couple of years. We're definitely going to have season 2, but I guess they're going to try and figure out a way to change it. Again, 2 years is in esports years is a lot of time to work with, right? So obviously they have time to adapt. And again, if you look at a franchise owners, a lot of these teams, majority of them are coming from PUBG Mobile, right? They have teams originating from PUBG Mobile, now called BGMI in India, and they have multiple teams in like Valorant and whatnot. So maybe they'll have an agreement and talk to each other and just be like, hey, okay, cool. We had this contract for like a couple of years maybe, and then after that we'll figure out how we're going to run things. So yeah, kick in the teeth, but it's in the future. It's down the line. You don't have to think about it, Jordan. That's how I deal with my problems. Yeah,
well, I mean, it's going to crop up at some point, right? You're going to need to get that tooth removed eventually.
Or just talk to your girlfriend and be like, hey, this isn't working out. Yeah, sorry.
Can't relate, actually. But anyway, one other thing.
Neither can I.
For different reasons, maybe. One other thing. I'm sure you guys saw Did you see the Asia rankings that Valve put out? Like, I know this is like this is a bit of a meme segment. This is a bit of a troll segment. Like, I fully understand that when I'm talking about these Asia rankings and I'm taking the piss out of them, that they're not even going to be relevant for 2 years. But I do just think it's funny. There's a link in the doc anyway. I really just appreciate the fact that Valve have put out these rankings and they don't give a fuck, man. Like, you've got like Team Uzbekistan is number 5 in Asia. Like,
yes, let's go Uzbekistan.
because they played in like the IESF thing, and then Timbermen, you know the Asian team Timbermen, right? They're number 7 in Asia. Like, they're pretty good. They've had some good Asia tournaments. Yeah. There's IHC, by the way, top 10 team in
I like
Asia
how
right now.
IHC and Mongolz are both there.
I legit just picture like, I don't even know. I legit picture like a podium where they rank people. They're giving out medals, and Blitz is on the 3rd podium, and then he runs over to the 2nd podium, and they give him another fucking one. He's like, "Fuck yeah!"
Yeah.
Dude, I can see Blitz and Techno in both like IHC and in Mongolz, right? And they're in the top 10, both of them. Maara's playing as well for IHC because he stood in at that one point.
Let's go, Maaraa.
So.
Maaraa,
Let's fucking go, Maaraa.
Yeah.
I do love seeing Captain Mo in number 15 though with steel helmet.
Oh, bro,
Shout
steel
out.
helmet, fucking
dude. Captain
insane.
Mo, somebody, Shao Sage, AE, and
What a team.
I don't know who Nighttime is.
Fucking Chinese
listen,
retirement home.
Dude, this team, I would pay money to watch them play because it would be quintessential 2014 Asian Counter-Strike. Like, imagine Captain Mo, somebody, AE, and Shao Sage. I mean, we all know these guys. Like, dude, come on.
Man, are they even still playing? Like, that's the thing, is like, how are they even still playing this game, man? Didn't they like retire like 5 years ago? Shao Sage especially.
They're just having fun. Like, the fact that Shao Sage is still playing just blows my mind.
Yeah. Anyway, what did I want to say about this? I obviously, you know, I'm actually looking forward to having rankings to talk about again. You know, we used to talk about Asia rankings all the time. Like, that used to be the thing when we first started doing Geographically Challenged, and then there wasn't really like, now at this point now there's like not really even enough teams or any conversation really behind it. It's like, okay, yeah, Mongolz is at the top, and Grayhound's at the top, and Rare Adam's at the top, and everyone else is kind of shit. But now maybe we'll have more. And what I do find interesting about these rankings is that they have specifically put the ANZ teams in Asia, which is obviously very much in line with what has been happening in CSGO. But if you look at some of the other rankings, like ESL in particular, I know have an ANZ ranking and an Asia ranking, and HLTV I think as well. If you actually break it down into sub-regions, do not have Asia all together with ANZ. ANZ is specific. So that gives you a little bit of an insight into the way that Valve's mind is working. And obviously, we think that going into CS2, as far as the pathways to the majors continue, it will be ANZ through Asia, which I think makes sense. Like, I like that fact. I enjoy the fact that ANZ is part of Asia. It kind of makes me feel like when I'm talking about Asian teams, I'm still talking about teams that I'm... what's the word?
Like, taking credit for the Mongols, basically.
I have some camaraderie with the Asia teams because ANZ goes through Asia anyway. So we're Asia. We're not really Asia, but we are Asia, at least as far as Counter-Strike is concerned. So yeah, I'll take credit for the Mongols. I mean, they're pretty good, so why not?
Yep.
Cool.
All right. Is that? That's it. That's the end of the episode. We don't really have much else to talk about. So yeah, we'll see what happens.
At least we have the Mongols to talk about. You know what? That makes me happy.
Yeah.
Thank you, Maaraa. Thank you, Blitz.
Thank you, Maaraa. Techno.
This is the GOAT.
All right, well, we'll wrap it up there, guys. Thank you very much again for watching episode 44 of Geographically Challenged. If you liked it a lot, you can like it. If you want to comment, that's appreciated as well. Give us some questions or topics for the next episode. We always like answering the community questions because it means that we don't have to come up with the ideas ourselves. So that's fantastic. And if you really liked it, buymeacoffee.com/Elfishguy, and then I will use that money to buy Pilski and Bleh a beer when we work an event together, which hopefully might not be far away.